I'm going to present my PhD research. I'm doing PhD under USM. So this is my PhD research for development of prognostic modeling to predict ICU mortality in elderly patients. So when we started to do this study, so I know that I'm going to be old in the future. So I'm embarked on this study. So pretty much, especially for myself. So I mean for all of us. Okay. So Malaysia is projected to become an aging population by year 2040. And we know that elderly age group in the ICU have been shown to have longer ICU stay, increasing in cost of treatment, and after adjusted for ICU stay compared to younger patients. So they have a longer ICU stay and increasing cost of treatment. And intensivists globally face the dilemma to decide on ICU admission when elderly critically ill referred to them, largely due to worry of squandering already limited ICU resources, and feel that ICU care could be deleterious and unsure appropriateness of the intensive therapy. So the talk of the geriatric ICU care have been going on in the global scene as well. Okay, so the objective of the research was to develop a prognostic model or scoring to help intensivists in predicting mortality in elderly patients admitted to ICU using local Malaysian ICU data. Because the prognostic scoring that we have currently is not specifically designed and built from specific population of elderly patients. And then also, benefit of the study, by having an elderly specific locally made clinical scoring, it can help guide intensivists objectively in deciding ICU admission for the elderly population. So this is a common scenario for us when we want to admit the patient. So by having the ability to predict the probability of mortality during ICU stay, calculated upon referral on ICU admission. So we know now, I mean for me, I want that thus the elderly with reasonable prospect of recovery will not unnecessarily have ICU admission refused. So we had to refuse a lot of patients during the COVID times, right? So by having this, we have an objective measurement and a guide for us to for the ICU admission for the elderly patient. Okay, so this was a prospective observational study of 200 patients aged more than 60 years old admitted to ICU of 4 hospitals in Malaysia. And we took baseline demography, all the investigations, and then we took some special biomarkers like procalcitonin, interleukin-6, urinary angle, and also vitamin D. Okay, so the statistical analysis plan for the model development, we use simple logistic regression and then multiple logistic regression to build the model. So first, all the variable in the simple logistic regression that had p-value of 0.25 or less, and then we entered into the multiple logistic regression. So from the first MLR, multiple logistic regression, we then remove both that have large standard error more than 2 times than the B coefficient, and p-value more than 0.25. That have the variable that have both, we remove from the multiple logistic regression for the model building. So after the step 2, the logistic regression was performed again, but by using the method backward elimination, likelihood ratio. So the IBM SPSS will build a model and automatically calculate each model calibration and each model estimated accuracy. So for the calibration, we use omnibus test and also Helmsmer and Lemaitre test. And for the accuracy estimation, we use Nagel-Kirke R-square and classification table. And then after that, we evaluate all the model performed by the SPSS, and in step 3, and the best model was selected based on non-significant multicollinearity and interaction. We don't want any multicollinearity and interaction. Then we tested for the calibration or goodness of fit test, as shown by the omnibus test being significant and Helmsmer and Lemaitre test being non-significant. And then we also estimate the model accuracy using logistic regression classification table and Nagel-Kirke R-square. And then finally, we do a final assessment of the selected model, and each variable is evaluated for their p-value, standard error of the variable, and also clinical context of the variable. And then after that, we calculate the predicted probability for each 200 patients outcome. And then finally, we do final model prediction testing by using ROC, reservoir operating curve. We want to see what's the AUC, what's the specificity, and also what's the sensitivity based on the predicted probabilities for each of the 200 patients. Okay, so the results. So we found out that we had 20 statistically significant differences between the mortality and also the survival of the ICU patient in the elderly patient. So the mortality was about 21%, and then the significant was a BMI, premorbid of chronic kidney disease, chronic lung disease, malignancy, APACHI 2, and so far score being higher in them, and all the other Nutrip score, clinical frailty scale, mechanical ventilation, use of catecholamine, blood transfusion, renal referral therapy, cardiac arrest, acute kidney injury, albumin, CRP, PCT, interleukin-6, vitamin D, and ring angle. So a lot of things in simple logistic regression, but they can't be all predicting for the outcome. So then we do the model development. So we entered into the multiple logistic regression. So we had all these results, and then in the step 2 we remove those who had a very high standard error, which is 2 times more than the B coefficient, and then which also have p value of more than 0.25. And then after that, we after removal of the variable, and we enter again for the second multiple logistic regression using the backward likelihood ratio, and then the SPSS built 5 models, and then they show the calibration goodness of fit of all the models. And then we evaluated, we choose the model 1 because they seem to have the best accuracy on estimation accuracy. And also they calibrated, and because our Osmo and Lemeshow was non-significant, and the omnibus test was significant. So then the final assessment of the selected model. So we saw that malignancy is there in the step 1, in the model 1, and then malignancy was removed because standard error was high and B compared to B coefficient. And then the B coefficient relationship is actually outcome is not clinically plausible. And use of catecholaminan was removed because both standard error and P value was high. And clinical frailty scale and RT use was maintained in the model, as CFS was deemed clinically important in elderly and RT has significant P value. Okay. So lastly, the model assessment, we did the final model assessment. So we saw the model has a goodness of fit test, good calibration, which Osmo and Lemeshow test is 0.69. The higher the P value, the better for the calibration. Means the observed and expected is the same, almost the same. And the omnibus test was significant, and accuracy screening by Nagel-Cricket square, R square is 45.45. More than 0.5 is considered good correlation. And estimated accuracy by the classification table had 84.8% accuracy. So to test how good is this model, we need to do ROC. So we did we calculate predicted probabilities for each of the 200 patients. So we come up with the final model, which is this is the score of the model. So the AUC was 0.867, and the standard error was quite low, 0.031, and P value was significant. Okay, so the development of this model can be used. Like for example, this patient admitted 67 years old, having cardiac arrest, AKI, BMI like this, T35, mechanically ventilated, capacity to score like this, and CFS. So when we calculated all this, so we can get the probability, like this patient have 46.9% probability of mortality within ICU admission. So by having in this study, prognostic modeling to predict ICU mortality was possible to be obtained with good prediction of AUC of 0.867 with acceptable sensitivity of 81% and 78.7%. So development of prognostic model calculated upon ICU referral with a good prediction accuracy can be obtained in elderly patient about 60 years old to predict probability of death during ICU stay, and can assist intensivists to objectively decide on ICU admission for elderly critically ill population. So our model, the next phase of this study will undergo external validation for the next 150 patients. So this is the model development. First, thank you.
There's a questions about your, because I noticed you have simplified logistic regression. You have like 20 variables.
Yeah. So
you have a sample size about 200 patients. So how do you assure that there is no overfitting of the data when you run the backward logistic regressions?
So when we do the test, so we ensure there is no overfitting by the omnibus test being significant, and also the Osmo Lemeshow test is not significant. Osmo Lemeshow, what we know, if it is less than 0.05 means it's not fitting, but it's going towards 1 is overfitting. But it's, we got a 0.69.
At the level of simplified logistic, you already run the Osmo test.
The simple logistic regression, we test each variable for the outcome of mortality and survival. So simple logistic regression, we test each variable, and then we see whether it is significant or not between the mortality and survival. So once we get all the significant tests, we enter into the multiple logistic regression.
Okay.
So at each step, memang we perform all the tests.
Yeah.
Yes.
I know the hospital test is actually to look at the goodness of it, meaning that what you're going to see is that whether the observed event is going to match with your expected
Yes.
events, isn't it? But overfitting is kind of difficult to diagnose actually. So yeah, never mind. I think yeah, because it's something that perhaps you need to consider to look into a more other predictive model in order to see whether not just depends on a plasma and measure test. Because if you do have that, then perhaps you need to consider lesser regressions in order to get a more predicted, a good model. I think I'm just giving an opinion, just in case if you, perhaps that is going to go into publication, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
For the simple logistic regressions, it includes the factors if the p-value less than 0.25 into the model.
Yes. So when we discuss with the several statisticians, especially from the USM statistician, because when we do the research, right? So they suggested that we choose those that have p-value of 0.25 or below, not the 0.05. So because there are actually among statisticians also they have several school of thought. Some say less than 0.25 or less. Now some groups have say 0.15 or less. Some you don't even see the 0.25. They just run the whole thing together, and they look at the standard error, and they look at the p-value when everything already entered into the multiple logistic regression. So, but when we discuss among the statisticians, when before conducting the study, so we decided to choose the 0.25 and below from the simple logistic regression to choose which variable that go into the multiple logistic regression, multivariable logistic regression.
I just wonder if multiple opinions on that, does it affect your model ultimately?
Ultimately, no, because in the end, we will look for each variable. We will look how good is the variable in predicting the outcome. So it must not have a big error. It must not have. It must have a very good discrimination between mortality and survival. So it also have to confound each other because it's so many variables, right? So that's the issue with model building. Thank you.